is a session on redefining intellectual property ownership in the Web3 gaming. We are thrilled to have exceptional guests who are in integral to this session. Without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed speakers. Please welcome Joseph Liang, Global Head of Web3 and Strategic Partnership at Exora. Thank you. Next is Shen Jiang, CEO of AKA Virtual Inc. 拍手お願いします。ありがとうございます。And next is Yu Zhen, founder of Mofu Mofu Music Caravan and Toho Web3 project. Next is Yatsu, co-founder and executive chairman of Animal Brands. And moderating this session, we have Kim Paul, CEO of Xpra. Please join me in welcoming our next speakers. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we'll just start off with basic intros about each of the panelists and think what their thoughts are about the current Web3 gaming industry. And yeah, can we start with off with the intros?
I guess I'll start. My name is Yat. I'm chairman and co-founder of Animal Brands. We're a company that's been involved in the Web3 gaming space really since CryptoKitties in late 2017, 2018. Today, we both operate, probably most known for our ownership of the Sandbox, but also all of our investments in the space, like OpenSea, Magic Eden. We've done over 500 investments in Web3, of which almost a third are in gaming. My point is that, the space, we're very bullish about Web3, broadly speaking, particularly Web3 gaming. One of the fastest growing ecosystems, which we backed very early on, is the TON ecosystem. Right? And we do think that the Web3 gaming ecosystem will grow to about 100 to 200 million new users in the next 12 to 18 months, in large part because of the TON Telegram, which we can talk about later. But yeah, we're very bullish about the space, and we think gaming will bring in mass adoption into Web3.
Hi, this is Jen from the project Mofu Mofu Music Caravan, which is a new IP project from Toho. And let me introduce Toho a bit. Is actually, if anyone here watched some animes, Toho Animation is launches these great animes from Japan market, such as Jujutsu Kaisen, Spy Family, and My Hero Academia. So Mofu Mofu Music Caravan is one of the very new IP that we launched to adapt into the Web3 industry. And beside that role, just introduce myself a little bit. I'm doing an outsourcing producer at Toho, the development team, as well as CEO of my own agency, which is called SoulSuite. We're helping Web3 project gaming to do these IP solutions. And in the industry, that excites us a lot is the potential of these innovative IPs, which enhances this user engagement and creates the new interactive user experiences. So very glad to be here today.
Hi everybody. I'm Ja from AKA Virtual. We're here to actually produce virtual characters and virtual storytelling for basically the Gen Z and the TikTok era. And we're doing a lot of stuff actually around the convention. We've got AI kiosks, etc. But we also power two very interesting projects over there. One called Poglin, which is basically a Pokemon-style card battle game. We do all the storytelling, all the virtual influencing, all the X spaces and the AMAs for them, as well as all of the TikTok videos. And then we're also doing a game called Fight League, which is a collaboration with Mixi here in Japan. We also do the same thing, create their animations and help them do their basically Web3, next generation storytelling for them.
Hi guys, Raj Josevian, Global Head of Strategic Partnerships at Exola. You can think of Exola as Shopify for video games. So we help game developers go direct to consumer using our various payment solutions and products. I guess to answer your question, what excites me the most about the Web3 space is probably UCG, user-generated content, especially when it comes to gaming. We've seen platforms like Fortnite, Roblox, Megamod have huge success in terms of allowing players and empowering the creator economy. And I think Web3 is going to take it to the next level in terms of true asset ownership and actual monetization of those assets, and enabling creators to become part of the money flow and ecosystem. So, yeah.
Great. So my name is Paul Kim. I'm the CEO for Xpla. Xpla is a gaming and entertainment focused layer 1 out of Korea. We are backed by one of the largest gaming companies in Korea called Come2Us. Come2Us actually developed a game called Summer's War, which has generated over $3 billion in revenue, and it's still generating $1 million every day with 1 million daily active users. So we have a deep library of gaming IPs, but we also invest very heavily into the Korean entertainment space. So we're, on an annual basis, we're the 3rd largest producer of dramas and movies in Korea. So we have a deep library of IPs. And what we're trying to do is leverage what we have in terms of IPs and really bring it forward to Web3. So speaking on IPs, I know we have very esteemed guests, specializing in IPs right now. Let's talk about redefining intellectual property ownership in Web3 gaming. So starting off with you, Yat, could each of you briefly share your perspective on how Web3 is redefining intellectual property, especially in Web3 gaming?
Well, I mean, I think it starts, for us, our mission is digital property rights, and it starts with the foundation that, particularly when it comes to gaming items, you can actually truly own your items. Right now, when you think about playing Web2 games, traditional games, whether it's a Fortnite or whether it's a Minecraft or whatever, the reality is you don't actually own your items. You are renting them from basically from a game company, and they can take it away at any time. When you actually have ownership, you don't actually just own it in sort of a tokenized format. You may also own the intellectual property rights attached to it. So when you think about NFTs, it allows you, for instance, the right to commercialize it because it's your ownership, whether you sell or trade it, or whether you might even use that intellectual property in other ways. Right? So that's kind of the basic level, right? The first level is that. And then what happens is that with property rights, you have the ability to interoperate. So for instance, if you were able to target every customer that was a Fortnite user because he owns a Fortnite skin, you can do that in the form of an airdrop. You can say, hey, I know you play Fortnite and you have this NFT that is actually using Fortnite, in the game. That means I can authentically verify that you're this customer. When you think about today, how do you actually target a customer in gaming or any industry? You pay Facebook or Apple or lots of money in advertising, but you don't actually know whether the customer is a gamer. You only have a rough idea, right? You can't prove that. But in Web3, because of digital ownership, you can prove that. So that's one other mechanism that opens up. And again, since you're the owner of that IP, you receive the benefit of that. And I think the other thing I would say is that maybe, and then I'll leave it to the rest to elaborate on other areas as well, is that when you allow for intellectual property rights in any asset, you allow the ability to create capital value. Right? So, if you own real estate, then you buy it for, 20, 30, 40 years worth of income, forward income. Right? And that's actually because you own that property. And we've seen this in intangibles. One of the, famous examples is music. Imagine what the music industry would be like if you didn't have intellectual property protection. You wouldn't have Taylor Swift, you wouldn't have BTS, you wouldn't have any of these music bands because they have no way in which they could protect their intellectual property rights. And it worked because the revenue was big enough to create essentially the legal infrastructure to protect that. But with NFTs, you can actually have both the legal protection, the legal verification, and the ownership for less than $1. Which basically means that everything you do online, including video games, can now actually be intellectual property that you create, whether it's in UGC, that you can then actually have and protect. And we're seeing this in education, we're seeing this with dance moves, we're seeing this with everything. So to me, it's like, if you can imagine what the music industry would have been like without intellectual property, today it's this multi-billion-dollar industry because of that. What will happen to gaming items, which is now $100 billion a year that we spend on gaming items? When you have intellectual property protection rights on it, we think we'll turn into a $1 trillion industry. So we're really excited about that potential.
Yeah, always give the best answer. I go through with my point of view. It's more around like the IP licensors side. So absolutely, so among like these token NFTs, which help all our users and creators, players to have this more control on their game, on their content. But on the other side, like from a licensing side, I think the real transformation will lies under the change of the license process. Actually, traditionally, like when we license some IPs, re-owned IP to, for example, aspects on color or texture, even in a physical product, when it comes to gaming, it's much more complicated. The reason why is IP have its worldview, and when it comes to a game, there's so many professionals have to check with every angle of the game to match the whole worldview. So this actually provides some more complicated stuff to our ownership. We are like, I would say we are already imagine the future that we own all this IP, these contents. But the fact is, all the major IP, they still find it very difficult. They're still challenging to integrate in the into the gaming stuff. So at this point, I think what we should adapt both in terms of speed and ideology to see like if we can synchronize the IP license with the tokenomics with that the same speed to make sure all our users they get the ownership of this decent IP rather than this IP with much narratives. So I think this is the person view we'd like to discuss and we'd like to seek as a future to like find the answer here with the Web3 industry.
So I'll try to talk about something different then. So for us, like intellectual property, what we did with AKA when we saw VTubers here in Japan is, what excited me was about the form of new IP creation. Like Yat and I have been working on games for 15 years, working on like the biggest IPs that Japan and the world has gone to offer. But what was always interesting to me was how you could participate in new IP creation, especially from a Japanese standpoint. And so that's what we first looked at this at, right? And so what's neat about what Web3 is enabled and also the challenges that it has, like it's, I came from the world where, old times where games became mobile games, and that there was a huge cultural dichotomy where new mobile game companies didn't know how to make games in the old fashioned, and they actually had a storytelling problem, actually. They made games that didn't have interesting universes. And then Web3 is trying to bridge that same gap now, where there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of universes that people are trying to build out there. And so for us, we've been thinking about and try to address the challenge across Web3 to be able to do better IP building, and then that allows you to kind of monetize at a bigger stance, right? Because if you think about Japan, they have a lot of very, very large IPs, but like if you go to Comic-Con or Comic-Con here in Japan, there's tons of creators in this entire world, and for them to get a chance to be able to participate, to be able to distribute, and then have attribution, all the things that that we've all been talking about, that's really great for it as a creator and IP ownership. That's a thing that we're really excited about. The other piece also is since I've been in games for so long, which is interesting, where right now, Jujutsu Kaisen, obviously doing a collaboration with them, obviously most exciting thing, but collaboration, what Web3 is actually starting to do really well, which we're very excited about with all our other projects, is that doing inter-game and universe IP collaborations where actually the IP holder actually feels safe. There's we work with Sega a lot and saying, your character is going into this other game, but you have full intellectual property control for that. That allows us to now start to mix with large IPs, medium IPs, individual small creator IPs to be able to do this very, very interesting new level of game creation and world building. That I think is what Web3 has really kind of broken down the barriers for us to do.
So I think for me, I approach it from a monetization point of view. At Xsola, we help game developers monetize, and so we know the video game industry is bigger than entertainment, music, sports put together entirely. And so how do you convince traditional Web2 games and game developers to transition to Web3? And I take Roblox as a platform. It's not a game, it's a platform. It's a UCG platform. And so if you can imagine hundreds of thousands of players creating their own content, partnering up with brands, creating new skins, etc., and those digital assets going up for sale in public marketplaces, you can grow an industry from what it is now to probably 10x. And that's how you're probably going to move over the next billion users into Web3, which is what everybody keeps talking about. How do we move the next billion users? There's only, maybe less than 100, 200, 300,000 active wallets, active users actually trading and playing Web3 games. There hasn't been so far that I've seen a sustainable model in terms of how you take Web3 games and turn them successful, and then also how do you take big traditional Web2 publishers and convince them that this is actually going to work and it's something worthwhile investing in, right? So I think if you approach it from a monetization model and show them where the money is, how they can increase their revenue through UCG, helping the creator economy, that's how you're going to really transform IP ownership rights using Web3. So.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one comment as well, which is that one of the challenges that Web3 games had before was distribution, right? Because the big platforms, whether it's Steam or Apple or Google, right? They actually try to stop it, right? And basically, they create restrictions. Like even with Apple today, now they finally allow your app to have NFTs, but you can't have utility with the NFTs. So what's the point in doing that, right? So it's kind of a big joke. But I think now there is a shift in the space because of Telegram, because of Ton, right? That I think makes sense for game developers to look at, because when we look at Notcoin, I mean these are very simple, right? Or like like Gamey, right? These are simple casual games, right? But they're bringing in literally tens of millions of users in the space today, without the same restrictions. And I think of it very similar to the early days of mobile gaming. Right? I mean, what were the big games in 2010, right? Angry Birds, Mafia Wars, right? Like all these type of very simple games, but they brought in a first wave of users before they became the Clash Royales and basically Summer Wars and all that kind of stuff. So my point is that we're now finally reached the point where we have that distribution, and I think it's worth looking at those areas. And then once you have lots of gamers in the space, the big platforms ultimately probably, I think, have to open up.
You guys are making my job really easy here. You guys answered a lot of the questions that I was going to ask. So I'm going to throw in a wrench here and ask you a question that's a little bit, I don't know, this is something from the top of my head. So this pertains to the adoption of Web3 games. And if you think about, I guess, the traditional Web2 game companies, what Web3 offers to users in terms of digital asset ownership or gaming asset ownership is quite revolutionary in my mind, because Web2 gaming studios, they're willing to forego part of their revenue streams and really onboard new users to their games. But I don't think that's working right now. So what I mean when I say that is Web3 game adoption is not picking up yet. It's still very low, meaning Web2 gamers aren't coming over to Web3. How do we really incentivize them to make that switch over to Web3 from Web2? And what kind of value propositions can Web3 provide those Web2 gamers to push them to make that switch?
Do you want me to start?
Okay. Sure.
Well, so first, I would disagree with the assessment, right? Only because we're seeing a lot more adoption to Web3 gaming today because distribution has been solved. I would say it's very similar to the early days of console versus mobile. What actually needed solving was the distribution vector, which we now have. So that's one area. But the second thing I would say is that in Web3, the ARPU, if you were to call it that, because every user is an owner, is significantly higher. So when you look at an Axie, or when you look at a Pixels, right, or you look at any of those games, right, the actual revenue per user is much higher. And that means that you can think of every user in Web3 almost like a paid user. Whereas if when you're playing in Web2 games, like the industry average is 1.8% conversion. And Summoner Wars might have like higher conversion that's successful. But generally speaking, the conversion rates are very low. So most of the users play for free. But in Web3, every person is a paid player of sorts, whether you own an NFT, whether you're trading tokens, and that kind of stuff. So 100,000 players in Web3 is like millions of players in Web2. So I think the parallels can be quite compared the same. Right? That's why the revenue in the Web3 games are so much higher relative to the user number. So it's true, the Web2 game companies have tens of millions more users, but the Web3 games actually have more revenue relative to that, which I think is a great opportunity for indie game developers. The final thing I would say, the struggle that I see that many Web2 to Web3 game companies have is they don't understand the financial models in Web3. So in Web3, when you own a token, it doesn't have to be a fungible token. It can be an NFT as well. You are actually owning a network effect. You're owning a utility, which you can use, but that utility also has a financial network effect. In the past, for all businesses, the financial network effect was actually hidden from the user, hidden from the entity, right? So, a good example would be if you look at L1, L2s, whether this is a Ronin or whether this is an Ethereum. You don't buy an Ethereum token because of the profit it gives you, right? You buy it for its utility, but really you buy it because it has a network effect. And that is an ownership representing that network effect. And most Web2 companies, including games, not only just game companies, don't understand that. So they look at purely the monetization of Web3, but they don't understand that the monetization is actually shared ownership, right? So in Web3, it's the only industry where if you have shared ownership, it grows. The traditional Web2 model is not that. The traditional Web2 model is control, it's monopoly, it's actually controlling the ecosystem. So they try to make the Web3 games control the economy like a Web2 game, and that doesn't work because it's not an open network. Right? So I think that's part of the shift. But the companies that do understand it have had lots of success, and we've seen the very successful Web3 games versus the ones that haven't because they understand network and token utility as a network effect.
Anyone?
I mean, I super agree. So like my stuff has always come from an IP and storytelling standpoint, and so I think the great analogy, which everybody understands, is Pokemon, right? And so Pokemon, we like the storytelling, the animation, all that kind of stuff, but the neat part about it is Web3 is actually the card collectible trading game, the physical one, because you actually, nobody can take that card from you, I mean, unless they fight you for it. And that's a representation of your participation in the community, right? And then longer term, build on when you go see somebody else and somebody says, oh, hey, this person has this card. This guy's been in this community for a long time. It represents everything that Web3 does, right? It represents reputation, skill, how much money you put in, that kind of stuff. And so that's like a big piece of how we think about why storytelling is very important for Web3 strategy, because ultimately we're thinking about creating, my key thing for this is always about core memories. For me, like as a kid, like, collecting everything is very, very important. And then Pokemon, when it started in the United States, it was just a very small thing. But nowadays, you got guys like Logan Paul walking around with a Pikachu, like around his neck. Like that's community. That's Web3 actually. That's everything that we want to do, and that's what we advocate hardcore.
Can I just add something also, which is that, in gaming as well, right? In Web2, we collect skins and items, as you point out, for status, right? But the other way that we translate status is financial effects, right? Whether you can purchase it or whether you have value, right? So for instance, because Pokemon has value, it's become a status, right? And so in Web3, that financial network effect accelerates. But likewise, if the financial network effect isn't there, then it declines. So a very good game that has, for instance, very negative financial value actually can get destroyed because of that, right? So in other words, they're very tied together. So there is a risk and an opportunity attached to it. And I think this is the point. Like if Pokemon cards weren't worth anything, I don't think Paul Logan would be wearing a Pikachu shirt, right? Right. So you need to tie these two things together for it to function because they are representations of your status and of the value.
Is the ownership aspect of digital assets or intellectual property, sharing that among other Web3 users, is that the ownership aspect, is that enough? That alone itself, is that enough? Or do you think we need to add, more utility to, let's say, to an NFT? Right now, it's basically a collectible. It's you own that NFT. But do we need to add different utilities to that NFT to make it more enticing for users to get involved with NFTs?
So if I give you a physical example, why would you buy a Gucci bag? It's not because you can put stuff in it. And why would you buy a Rolex watch? It's not to tell the time, right? Yeah, yeah.
It's a
right?
community effect,
Exactly.
right?
It's a community, but it's also cultural capital. So NFTs and the representation is cultural capital. Most of the time, we talk about economic capital, right? So fungible tokens represent money value goods. But there's a point where money value goods isn't enough because maybe you have enough money, maybe you own your house, maybe you have something already that isn't representative of the community you want to come in. And so we have these cultural goods, right? And that is cultural capital. The most successful brand companies have made their brands into cultural capital. So Pokemon is cultural capital, right? You can't measure it purely in money. It's beyond money, but it has to have value for it to have capital, right? If a Birkin bag wasn't worth what it was, nobody would talk about it either. But it's become cultural capital within a community. Same is true for a Bored Ape, a Pudgy Penguin, a Mochaverse, they're the same. So there's distinctions between the two types, right? And I think, lots of times when people design games, they focus on the economic capital, but they don't try to focus enough on the cultural capital. And I think IP creators understand cultural capital very well, but they sometimes don't combine the economic aspect sufficiently.
They can't mix it.
Because they don't understand it that well. And I think that's the magic and the risk of Web3.
But I think also you have to answer the question of like why I as a Web2 game developer would want to become a Web3 game developer when I can resell the same digital asset over and over again. So we spoke about Gucci. Roblox sold, 30 million worth of digital items in partnership with Gucci, right? Digital bags. And you as a consumer, you want to identify your digital identity with your actual life identity, right? So you want to buy that digital item. So that problem hasn't been solved yet in terms of why would I as a game developer sell a single item when I can sell multiples of the same item and have a closed loop ecosystem. And still, for the user, it's all the same. To a certain extent, in terms of tradability and portability and the economics aspect of that. And then also the added friction from Web3 gaming, right? I got to go and collect an additional wallet. I got to get myself educated. We haven't seen good examples in terms of how are we solving those infrastructure issues that remove the friction for the end user, because I as a gamer don't want to have to go and register for MetaMask, register different coins, put everything in. I as a gamer just want to go in and join an immersive experience and play with my friends and be part of a community, right?
So my view on this would be that it's true there's friction. I think though the friction is around, we don't conquer it through pure technology. I think we conquer it through good storytelling. When you think about gaming, if my mom was going to play Roblox, she'd be like, I don't know what to do, right? For her, that experience would be maybe more difficult than a MetaMask. But for a kid, it's easy. But why is it easy? Because your friends are playing it, your social community is playing it, it's natural to them,
So it's
right?
the next generation of gamers, is
It's
that Web3
next
should be
generation, but
targeting,
it's
is what you're
also,
saying.
like for instance, some people say, oh, crypto's so hard. But have you tried opening a bank account? That's actually objectively harder, right?
Open a bank account in Japan.
Yeah, exactly. But the reason we think it's easy is because you know how to open a bank account. You know how to open a bank account. So I can ask my friends. So when you go to a place like Hong Kong, which is a very small concentration, I have enough networks to help me. But when I go to a place like, let's say rural America, I might be the only person who knows something about crypto, and so I don't have a network to help me, right? And like status good in gaming, 80% of people play games not for the fun of the games, they play it for social reasons, right? It's a social network. And so it's the signaling around that. So I think it's all about breaking that sort of, acceleration point, right?
Yeah. So I'll just ask a question. How do you fix the issue then? How do you educate
I think it's
3.2
storytelling.
billion gamers, right?
I think it's storytelling. Because if you look at, for instance, Pokemon or any game out there, our children can tell every story about them, right?
That's core memories.
Yes, core
Everybody
memories.
has the same
That's
core
right.
memories. That's why.
So we can't teach them history, right? But we can teach them about games. And I think this is the power of games, is that they're master storytellers. And I think through storytelling, we can teach them about that.
There's also mission on the IP producers side. So as long as we understand the trend of the game, for example, the Telegrams game, so what our mission is to produce some more IP can suit the mini games. So I think it's not only for the game side, they need to get prepared for the ownership for the players. Also from the IP producer side, those who can bring the culture into the industry. So eventually people will come in the industry because of the culture. So how we bring it in is very vital. As our Mofu Music Caravan is doing. Like we bring voice actors from, like I would say, Web2 industry. We bring voice actors who play roles in Jujutsu Kaisen, in many other like famous animes. When he come here, like his fans gonna come here because there's value stick to the NFT, stick to the game item. So that's why all these Web2 users will come in and play the game. So this, I think it's a whole transformation, need every aspect to get a better understanding of every side of the whole process.
Thank you very much. I think we are done with our time. I hope that was a valuable session for you guys. Just to sum up, yeah, I think IP ownership in general is going to be massive for Web3. I think we are all, I guess, in some way part of it right now. So let's continue to grow this space. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone. We will be done with this session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take a picture. Please wait. Thank you very much. ありがとうございました。皆様もう一度最後に大きな拍手をお願いいたします。